everyone, and welcome back to the Millcreek Government Channel. I'm Jessica Stutzman. Currently, there is no single waste management approach for managing all materials and waste streams from all circumstances. Landfills are the most common form of waste disposal and are an important component of an integrated waste management system alongside reducing, reusing, recycling, and composting. Modern landfills are well-engineered facilities located, designed, operated, and monitored to ensure compliance with state and federal regulations. They are also designed to protect the environment from contaminants, which may be present in the waste stream. Joining us in the studio today from Advanced Disposal to dissect the Greentree Landfill is General Manager Ed Yonner and Special Waste Coordinator Anthony Labeni. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you, Jesse. Nice to see you again.
Well, I've really been wanting to have this conversation about a landfill. We talk, again, through my passion and my profession, mostly about recycling and composting, but a landfill is still, like I mentioned before, a really integral part of disposing of our waste. So what is the difference between the town dump, which most people might refer to a landfill, but there's a difference. What's the difference between the town dump and a landfill?
Well, I'm going to yield that question over to Tony. He is our environmental specialist, and he has a unique perspective on it.
So the biggest difference between the old style town dumps and a modern landfill is the engineering and construction that goes into it. What used to be referred to as a dump, every town had one. It was a borrow pit or an old strip mine, and they would just put all of their waste into that pit. A landfill is highly engineered. They use liner systems and leachate collection to control pollution and ensure for the long-term care of the waste that they take in.
Mm-hmm. And so residents in Millcreek, we all generate waste, some more than others, but we place our waste curbside for Advanced Disposal to collect, and where does it go from there?
Yeah, you know, it really looks easy once it's placed at the curb, but there's a lot of time and energy after we collect the garbage at the curb. So we currently take all of the waste that's collected in Millcreek Township. We deliver it to our transfer station in Warren County. It's in Pittsfield, Pennsylvania. It's called the Warren County Transfer Station. And really what that is a large building that we unload the garbage onto the ground and reload it into larger trailers. At that point in time, we then deliver the waste to our Greentree Landfill in Elk County. It's actually located in Fox Township with a mailing address of Kersey, Pennsylvania.
And what's the benefit of dropping it off at the transfer station first?
Well, the transfer station actually gives us an opportunity to have lower transportation costs to the landfill. So we can take waste from several different communities, several different businesses, combine them together in one large load to minimize the amount of traffic on the roads. So we'll have less trucks on the roads, we'll have greater payloads to the landfills, so it has a smaller carbon footprint, keeps the cost lower for the consumer.
And how far away is the transfer station from Millcreek Township, and how far away is the landfill from Millcreek Township?
Well, Millcreek Township's approximately 50 miles from our transfer station and another 65 miles from the transfer station to Greentree Landfill. Okay,
so it does help even probably cut down on some of the man hours that your drivers spend on the road, so they don't have to make that that trip all the way to the landfill. When did this landfill open?
The landfill was first permitted in 1987.
Okay.
It was a local gentleman from Brockway had obtained the permit for some land he had, and then it's had some ownership changes. It was one of the first landfills in PA to be completely double-lined. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, landfills had either clay liners or some were single-lined. When they constructed Greentree, the entire thing is double-lined.
Oh, that's fantastic. And the pioneer for Subtitle D series, can you touch on that a little bit?
A lot of that had to do with the double liner system. Mm-hmm. At the time, in the late 80s and early 90s, a lot of sites were still doing the single liners. Mm-hmm. And one thing that Greentree had the foresight is that over time, having a double liner system, it's both safer for the environment, it gives you an extra layer of protection, and it really opens up the types of waste that can be safely disposed there for the long term.
And so this landfill has been around for about 30, 31 years now.
Yeah, long time.
And we just mentioned the Pioneer for Subtitle D sites. Again, that sounds like a very technical term, so that leads me to my next question. Are transfer stations and landfills monitored by any government agency?
Absolutely. The landfill is overseen by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. Their region office out of Meadville is the one that oversees it. They inspect the landfill about every other week is when they come in there, and usually they're looking over operations and records held by the site, and they check groundwater. And we report to them monthly, quarterly, and annually on different topics about the landfill and how it's operating.
Is it tough to get a permit to operate a landfill with the DEP? Is that a tough application to send in?
Yeah, I think we would both agree the process is arduous. Yeah, it's a big one. It's as Tony explained, design, right?
Yeah. The first thing you have to pass what's called a harms benefit test to get a landfill permitted, and you have to show that the benefit to the community of having a landfill outweighs the harms of it. And it's not just economic; there's environmental incentives also, and then it goes on to a technical review of the application, and if you pass all that, then you have to get agreements with your host townships for wherever they're going to build it. And once you get through all that, and if you can get the permit approved, then you can start construction.
And you mentioned that the DEP stops in quite frequently. Is this an announced visit or an unannounced visit?
Very seldom is it announced. Usually they show up completely unannounced, and that's really the way it should be.
Right. We have the same thing happen at the Millfair Compost and Recycling Center. They do, again, our operations aren't quite as intense as yours, but they do show up unannounced quarterly. And so, when you see the DEP truck pull in, you just want to have all your ducks in a row, and you want to make sure that visit goes well. And then the Greentree Landfill is also part of the Erie County Solid Waste Plan, and that's been in place for quite some time now. That was a pretty important plan to get approved through. Why was that so important?
Well, it's critical. In Pennsylvania, counties are required to designate disposal sites for their municipal solid waste. And most counties went through a process where they invited different waste disposal companies to submit applications and meet the criteria in the county plan. So Erie County's plans are specific to Erie County. So they may actually have minimum criteria. We may have to reserve a specific amount of space in our landfill for Erie County. And if we choose to do that, we also normally provide rates for disposal. And by doing that, it enables our landfills that are registered with Erie County to accept the municipal solid waste. Without that approval, we would not be able to accept their waste.
Right, and that plan was done several years ago. I was a part of the process, and I do know that it was so beneficial in that the plan really looks at of course, your daily intake of trash from your residents, but then, what if you have a natural disaster and God forbid, fill up an entire landfill that's close to you? What are your backup plans? And so that was a nice plan, that came out of the Erie County Solid Waste meetings. So I just wanted to touch on that for a moment. What materials are permitted and accepted at the Greentree Landfill?
So as a Subtitle D landfill, our facility can take any type of non-hazardous waste. Pennsylvania really designates 3 types of non-hazardous waste: municipal solid waste, which is it's your household garbage and commercial trash, construction and demolition debris from building and tearing down structures. And then the third type that Pennsylvania looks at is residual and special wastes. These are your industrial wastes from manufacturers, as well as treatment plant sludges from your local municipalities and the wastewater treatment plants there.
And the thing that I find the most fascinating about a landfill, because I have been to one and received the tour and actually been to the top of this site, is the construction that goes behind the landfill. All those different layers, like you mentioned, it's not like the town dump. There's a lot of safety precautions and safety measures put into place to make sure that this is environmentally friendly to its neighbors. So if you don't mind, the next thing I want to talk about are the layers of the landfill, and maybe just a short description of each of those layers.
Sure. We'll work from the bottom up. So for the bottommost liner, they put a subgrade down so that it's nice and smooth under it, and then they put down the first layer of liner. And what that is, it's 60 mils thick, and it's high density polyethylene. When they bring it in, it comes on rolls that are about 22 feet wide, and they black out the entire area with it, and then every seam on that gets welded with a machine. Subsequently, every seam gets tested to make sure it doesn't leak, and everything gets patched. And if a seam fails, it's replaced. Once that's in place, it gets covered with a textile to protect the liner, because you don't want anything to pierce it. And then at Greentree, for the most part, we use 2 feet of recompacted clay between that liner and a second liner that goes on top of it, and that's what we mean by a double-lined landfill.
Okay.
And then there's collection points for the water for leachate that's generated by the landfill. And then there is 3 feet, I believe, of protective cover for the entire liner system, because at that point you're going to start putting waste in, and you want to, again, make sure nothing can go through the liner system. Once that's in place, you get the landfill cell certified by the state, you can begin placing waste into it. And at that point, they call that the fluff lift, where we're very picky about what goes into that. We only put municipal waste in. We don't put in construction debris and all the waste that goes in. It's checked to make sure that, as it gets compacted, it's going to have 300 feet of waste on top of it. So we have to make sure that the weight of that's not going to push anything down through that protective cover that might affect the liner system. So then once that, we put about a 10-foot layer of that fluff lift in, and then at that point we can start directing other wastes in there for disposal.
Okay. And I just want to go back to what you mentioned, and all the testing done and welding those layers together is to prevent leachate, or to prevent any water waste that's coming off of the trash entering into our groundwater system. So obviously the landfill has these protective layers in place. Is that leachate water collected and treated somehow, or what happens to the leachate water?
At Greentree Landfill, we collect it. We have a series of sumps and risers. So basically all the water throughout the landfill drains to a low point, and then we pump it out. Greentree is the type of site that we have a centralized wastewater plant. So we basically have an industrial wastewater treatment plant that all the leachate flows down to that plant. We treat it aerobically and anaerobically, and we generate a sludge that goes back to the landfill, and then the clean water gets discharged under an NPDES permit.
Okay, and then similar to that, we also have regular rainwater that will fall onto your site. Do you manage stormwater in a different way?
It is different. Stormwater is directed into settling ponds. The surface water that goes there, it's just to give it retention time so it can drop out any solids that it might get picked up. And we're careful to make sure, as soon as any water that touches garbage has to be managed as leachate. So it gets directed into the leachate system, where, other areas of rainwater, just from the roads and such, that gets directed to stormwater retention ponds.
And why is leachate, again, the water that runs off of the trash that's brought in, why is that maybe a little more dangerous or hazardous to our health, and we don't want it to enter the groundwater?
Well, the leachate actually has all the components of the waste stream. So the water that actually rains into the landfill and leaches through the garbage picks up any of the properties that the waste has. So if there's any metals, any contaminants, all that's going to be in the water now. So to have that go into the groundwater table would be harmful, because it would now be contaminated with all the properties in the landfill. So it's collected in this liner system and sent to the centralized wastewater treatment plant. And at that point, the water is actually deemed acceptable to be released into cold water fish hatchery standards.
Okay.
So yeah, it's really a big improvement, and a
Yes.
very difficult process to do. Am I right, Tony? It's very sophisticated process to get it to that point.
And so we've added our daily trash for the day. And is there some sort of cover that goes on top every single night? I know, of course, I'm sure birds are a problem, smells are a problem. What does the daily cover look like?
Different sites do it differently, but at Greentree we put down about a foot of daily cover. Usually it's just soil that we cover with. Some sites will strip that off in the morning and reuse it. We just keep going with it. And it's enough to cover the waste and ensure that there's no waste picking up through. You have to be able to control for odors and pests.
Right. And something I find very, very interesting is that there are gases, just like I said, just like there's residual from the water, there's also gases that are emitted from a landfill. What are those gases?
The primary one is methane. In landfill gas, it's the gas is about half to 2/3 methane, and the other contaminant gases in there, you're looking at nitrogen, carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, and in the past, facilities all flared it. Every landfill would just have a flare on site, and they would burn it off. Greentree collects it, and we clean it.
Okay, and then how is it used?
It goes through our cleaning plant, and then we pump it about 9 miles to a national fuel pipeline.
Okay. So it would be then considered a methane a collection system and converting the gas to energy.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Absolutely. Actually, it generates a very large volume too. Enough to actually power the city of Philadelphia.
Wow, that's impressive.
So our Millcreek residents are part of the solution of lowering the carbon footprint.
Yes.
Without a doubt.
Good. And tell me again, one more time, about the groundwater monitoring station.
So the landfill is surrounded by a number of wells. I believe it's somewhere between 18 and 22 wells at different points. I believe there's 2 that are up gradient. They're basically uphill from the landfill. And that's really to take a look at groundwater coming to the site. And then the remainder of them are all downhill from the landfill. And they are checked quarterly, and there's a whole suite of analysis that it's tested for that we see and continue to hope remains non-detect.
And how tall is the Greentree landfill?
From bottom to top, from the bottom of the cell to the top of a finished cell, you're looking at about 300 feet.
300 feet, okay. And is there a cap from the DEP where you're not allowed to get above a certain point?
Every contour of the landfill is part of your permit.
Okay.
When you get it permitted, part of your application is you tell them exactly how you're going to build it. And if you are going to deviate from that at all, you have to go back to them and get their approval to deviate from that.
And do you, with your permit with the DEP, again, and I'm not sure how far out you expect the landfill, the life expectancy to be. Will you ever have to build new cells, or expand any of your cells, or buy adjacent properties to expand anything to that nature?
Constantly, as you fill up a cell, you have to be building out in front. So as one cell's nearing getting filled, you'll build out your next cell so you can move into that one next. And then once you move out a couple cells, that's when you'll go back and cap what was previously filled. There's a little bit of a lag time there, because over the first 1 or 2 years, you'll get settlement of about 20 feet from the trash that was placed previously, and to get up to your final contour, you're going to have to go back and put a little bit more in there before you cap it.
I see. So it does settle, and then you can add more to it, and then it settles again. And so when you finally reach your cap, that's when you stop. What's the life expectancy of the Greentree landfill?
Right now, with the current permitted volume, it's about 33, 34 years.
Okay.
But there is, the landfill has plenty of room to grow.
Yes. And I know that there's costs, again, associated with dropping off at a landfill. Not only do you have to pay drivers, and you have trucks that you have to maintain, but then but there's landfill tipping fees. Can you touch on a little bit on the costs that really go into operating and maintaining the landfill?
Yeah, I can speak to to some of the administrative fees the landfill pays. Currently, just state mandated fees are about $6.25 a ton. In addition to that, there could be host municipalities. That'd be the host municipality that actually the landfill is located in. They have a fee also. So it's not uncommon for these fees to approach $10 per ton and more before we even accept a ton of garbage in the landfill. The landfill's paying those fees. In addition to that, the cost per construction for an acre of the landfill is right around $750,000. So the cost is very, very high, and there's all the engineering, all the planning, all the monitoring, all has a very high cost to it. But yes, so the fees as well. So this is actually an income producer for the host municipality, and it helps fund the recycling programs in Pennsylvania and some of the other Growing Greener grants that are available in Pennsylvania. Most of those are funded from the host fees that are paid.
That is true. I do know that our county coordinator does talk about that a lot. And we have the Lakeview landfill here in Erie County, and again, Millcreek Township. We now send our trash to the Greentree landfill. But yes, the host township and the host county, and like you said, Growing Greener funds all benefit from the waste that's dropped off at the landfill. So, is it still cheaper to use alternative methods to sending your items to a landfill? So if people recycle and compost, is it still cheaper to do those alternatives than to just send everything to the landfill?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's really, there's a lot of value-driven options out in the waste industry. Recycling certainly one of them. One thing to remember about recycling, the actual processing cost for recycling is lower than landfill disposal. And where it really helps is industries that generate a single commodity of material like cardboard. Something very easy to manage, has a long useful life to it, can easily be recycled, sold easily, generally accepted everywhere. So that is definitely a cost-driven item for us. Makes sense to do. Curbside recycling definitely cuts down on the waste disposal cost as well.
And just tagging off of our conversation here based on cost, again, recycling is not free. There are fees, involved with recycling as well. But recycling, and we've seen this lately, is an ever-evolving industry where really the supply and the demand of the markets, again, seems to change with whatever, technology is new, because we cut down on a lot of newspapers by going into the age of internet and emails, but then we came into the age of online ordering and shipping, so now we have a lot of cardboard. Tell me what you see in the recycling industry as far as supply and demand, and what the buyers want, or maybe what they have too much of.
That's an excellent question. Now, it's very popular to have something called single stream recycling, where it's very easy for the residents that they mix all the recycling together, and it speeds up collection at the curb because we're not curb sorting by item, aluminum, glass, cardboard, etc. But it's important for residents to play a part and a role in this. Keep garbage out of recycling. That'll keep costs lower. That really does increase the cost at the processing centers. People that are buying this material, they expect the material to be in very good shape, because when a person or company is using this for another use, they have to have the material clean and free of contaminants. So it's very important to get the resident involved.
Yes, and we do. And right now, our slogan is, when in doubt, throw it out. We only want clean recyclables going, and acceptable recyclables going to the material recovery facility. And all of that information is available on our website on millcreektownship.com. We're just about wrapping up our time here for the show, but what I do want to ask, again, some of the landfill fees go back to environmentally friendly grants. What other unique environmental projects does your landfill have ties to?
The Greentree Landfill has looked at a number of different ways to work in our area. We have food lots for the deer and the wildlife. We run a trout hatchery at the facility. There's a tributary that runs near us called Bear Run, and we put a trout hatchery on there, and we'll stock that in the local streams. We raise pheasants, we grow corn, You know, the area that we're in is rural, and there's a lot of hunters, and that's one thing that we like to try to support. Right now, we're in the process. We're working on building a wetland to replace some, and that project's underway, and we hope to get that completed before too long. And we also, part of our post-closure plan is to have an outdoor environmental classroom.
Okay.
Where we can bring, and we currently do bring schools and groups on site, and we show them the landfill and the gas system and the trout hatchery and just the things we do, so that people can understand what a landfill really is, because a lot of people have that view that it is just a hole in the ground.
Right. Well, I'm so glad that you guys were able to come on the show with me today and discuss some of these, again, these environmentally friendly projects that you're doing. I had no idea, again, knowing that we send our waste to Greentree, I had no idea that you guys had such other close connections to, you know, local environmental organizations and to helping the environment. But I really, really appreciate you guys coming on the show today and explaining all of this to our residents.
Well, thanks for having us. It's been our pleasure. Thank you.
Viewers, I want to thank you for tuning into the Millcreek Government Channel today. Again, this was a very eye-opening show on where our waste goes. Of course, we always want to encourage you to recycle and compost, but we know that sending our waste to a landfill is also part of our waste management solution. So I want to thank you for tuning into the show, and until next time, have a great day.